Hello everyone, welcome to today's Knowledge webinar. What's new in Creo 9? Creo 9 is full of productivity and usability enhancement to help you deliver your best designs in less time. And today you'll see there are new tools for managing, manipulating, and understanding CAD models. Creo 9 continues to enhance tools for ergonomics, model-based definition, simulation, generative design, and additive subtractive manufacturing. Today's presenter, Paul Dye, is a member of the Virtual Center of Excellence with PTC, and he specializes in the area of Creo, aided by his background in mechanical engineering, engineering design, and 3D modeling. Let me tell you a little bit about Knowledge. Knowledge is changing the way designers purchase 3D software, offering more choices, more freedom, best advice, and faster service. And this is where you can find Creo 9 in all its manifestations. So check us out at knowledge.com. And now I'm going to share Paul's screen so he can show you all about the new Creo 9. Take it away, Paul.
Alrighty, and you can hear me okay, Barbara?
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Barbara, very much for first and foremost having me on, and thank everybody for hopping on to check out the presentation today. So really happy to be here and really happy to go over really the main question of the day being what's new in Creo 9. And there's a lot of things to cover there, a lot of improvements that we've had in many different areas, everywhere from usability and productivity, human factors analysis, model-based definition and detailing, generative design, simulation, even down to the manufacturing world and additive and subtractive. A lot of different areas, a lot of different things to cover. I'm going to go through and cover it at a high level in most of these different areas, and I'll go through and show some different demonstrations so you can see what a few of these different features look like in the context of Creo as well. A little bit of stuff for everybody. Maybe some stuff will be very, very relevant for you, maybe others not so much, but that same thing could be very relevant for someone else. So we want to make sure that we really cover everything here. And with that, we can go ahead and dive into it. Like Barbara mentioned, if you do have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat as well, and we will do our best to answer them. Okay, let's go ahead and get started here, and we'll get started into usability and productivity. This is an area that we focus on with every single release of Creo, and we definitely have some great ones coming in this release. Starting here first with divide and unify surfaces. This is a new ability to say, okay, take a given service that you have, but I want to deal with just a piece of it. It's useful in many different areas, things like manufacturing information, model-based definition, defining something of a given area, even into things like simulation or generative. Maybe you want to apply loads on a specific area, but not the entire surface. Well, now you can do that. You can divide a surface, you want to designate that area for a certain function, and you can also unify surfaces. That means that you can work with divided surfaces, get to wherever you need to, and finally, if you wanted to, you could put them back together at the end. So that's a new capability that you have now inside of Creo Parametric, definitely something that you want to utilize. Some changes to design intent management, mostly in the model tree. You have kind of an evolution tree for things like bodies and quilts, what different steps were taken to create the surfaces, what features went into it. You have a design items tree that you can work with for things like custom groups. You can do some grouping of your own items, almost make up your own model tree for more complex models, and even for more basic ones. Just having clear access to filters and columns, you now have a toolbar for that. It's really all about making that model tree and the design tree workflows work better for you and be more efficient along the way. Improvements in Sketcher, the biggest one being the auto scale for the first sketch that you're working with. So for example, if you're working for the very first sketch of a part, draw something out and then you need to make a change, maybe just the height of a rectangle, well, it's able to scale the whole piece based on what you changed for that first sketch. Really very easy to get it to where you want. You don't have large numbers left over afterwards or having to track down missing dimensions because it all got scaled wrong. You don't have a lot of those issues now, so definitely a nice improvement there. And actually, one thing I mentioned here too is even into inspection improvements of the sketch. One thing that's really been improved here is being able to see what's wrong with the sketch, looking for open ends. It can highlight overlaps. Those can be persistent, as you can see there now. Very easy to spot those. So just a couple different improvements there for making sure that your sketches are coming out the way that you want. We added in the ability for curve from point functions. Basically define a point, give it a direction, and now allows you to build a curve directly off of that. Really helpful for multiple different areas, surfacing, that type of workflow. Made improvements in patterns. We now have more flexibility and especially speed. Really speed things up, like identical pattern groups. That can be done much faster. It's much easier to define them, easier to adjust them when you need to regenerate. A few nice improvements there. You could see, for example, here going from 48 seconds now down to around 2 seconds. Definitely going to save you a lot of time if that's something that you work with pretty often. Some improvements in surfacing as well. This means better control over the curve definition, specifically around curvature and acceleration control points. You can now grab those, see them, make it easier to get those curves exactly the way that you want. And also now into working with the freestyle tool, you can now smooth and simplify curves. We have a new brush capability for working with that, for really sculpting that organic shape. I'll go through and show a demonstration of this, but it's a very, very useful tool. Also the ability to mirror shapes inside of freestyle, that got an update, so definitely a lot of additions there. Improvements in ECAD support. We added the ability to import screen layer and solder mask and have them come in as context data from EDA files now. It's something you can work with, especially if you're using that level of ECAD integration. Some improvements in assemblies as well. You can now replace a component within assembly, retrieve missing components. That got a rework. It's a lot easier now to go find those parts, clean them up. You can find component session IDs in the model tree, group exploited offset lines. One of the bigger ones was improved dealing with circular references. That's now something that's just a single button inside of the notification center to go explore those circular references, track them down, get them fixed up. And so definitely a lot of areas in usability and productivity. I do want to show a demonstration of the flexible modeling features that we worked on. A few of those are definitely interesting to take a look at, so we'll go ahead and see that now. All right, so again, we're going to be working with our freestyle surfacing tool here. Specifically, I want to dive into the new brush capabilities that we have available to us, and I'll show that off in a few different examples here. So we can see this rabbit model here was actually created using the reconstruct from facets feature that we have in freestyle. Could have been a model that was sent over to us from another system, but we can work with the model and get into whatever resolution we need. We can make it go from a lesser resolution to a higher one if we need to. Gives us a little bit more control, like we could see there. And you can see up here in the ribbon, we now have the brush button, and that's going to open up our brush tool. All right, and definitely a few different areas that we can work with here. The first option that it defaults to is pull, which is going to move the mesh vertices along their normal. You have different settings that you can change to increase or decrease the size of the brush, softness, intensity. Really allows you to get to some very organic looking surfaces. And this can always be changed while you're working. And we can go through and change that up here, start manipulating the mesh. So you can just see as I move that mouse along the surface, it's pulling on the different facets. And one quick thing that you can do is you can change the pull direction just holding in the shift key, which now essentially acts like a push in that geometry in the opposite way. Inflate is another brush option that we have here to uniformly scale the mesh, which might be useful up on one of our rabbit's ears. Go ahead and use that there. Another useful tip for the brush is the fact that it can be used for selection on the model. It's just a very quick way to go through here, select on the different faces of the surface, and then once we have that selection done, it's very easy to jump right back into your different brush tools and make the proper adjustments from there. All right, so just a very quick look through that, but really a lot of different enhancements there. If you haven't worked with that, definitely something that you want to try out and really get to some very cool, very organic shapes that could be very useful in a number of different areas. Okay, next area that we'll go through is some of the improvements that we have in human factors, or you may have seen this as mannequin. This is an area where you're able to put human models into the context of your designs to check for ergonomics, reach, comfortability. Very, very useful tool. And this is something that got a lot of updates here with Creo 9. First one here is the new mannequin editor. We have a new custom mannequin that you can take, change, resize, whatever your specific design needs might be. And then once you do that, you can save them off. You can save as many different mannequins of your own size your own shape. And after that, go ahead and use that inside of your assemblies, just as you would any other mannequin. So really nice addition there. And these are all things that I'm going to cover in a brief demonstration as well, so you get to see what that looks like. Improve the manipulation and constraints that you use inside a mannequin. You'll now see a 3D dragger that you actually really see many other places in Creo now. That's also now available inside a mannequin. Essentially, you're picking an edge or a vertex. It's going to show that to you. Makes it very easy to move things around. The reach functionality also got an improvement. It'll basically show you a missing distance. It'll show you how far away that the mannequin is in their reach. It doesn't just say, no, you can't do that. It's going to say, no, you're pretty close. It'll go through and put it out to the full extent of the reach and tell you how far away that you are from being able to reach something. Also, with that, better visibility into the model tree that you use inside a mannequin makes keeping track of everything much easier than before. Also improve safety. So what you have is a visual field that you can turn on. You can look at something and it's going to show you what's obstructing it, what's not obstructing it, or what's not able to be seen. And even after those obstructions, what are you able to see? You can have multiple different visibility cones set up, and ultimately you're going to get a better idea of that field of view for your mannequin. Just make sure that they're able to see whatever they need to see. Great, and with that, we'll go ahead and take a brief look at this so we can see what that actually looks like in the context here of Creo. All right, so we'll go ahead and open up our assembly here to get started. And we're going to be going through our demonstration of human factors. So depending on the type of designs that you work with, a lot of different considerations that you might have to take into account. Fit, ergonomics, obviously something like here with the motorcycle, those type of things come into play. And that's what human factors is all about, bringing in these types of human models, make sure that they can see what they need to, make sure that they can reach, make sure they can fit. And with Creo 9, we've introduced some of that new functionality. The biggest one here is the ability to do custom mannequins. We've already had a huge library of standard sized people, tall, short, various ethnic backgrounds. What you can do now is take that and customize it, make it however you want. Taller, shorter, heavier, longer, shorter arms. It's whatever best fits your demographic that you're designing around. If you're going for a specific market or you have certain limitations, you can just do that on your own. You see very easy to use interface, set the height, the weight, the different components. You can take those, use them in any of your standard human factor analyses that you want to run, and really set them up exactly the way that you want. Lots of different attributes that we could change there, and now we can save that off. And what this is going to be is an inseparable assembly, so it's very clean to work with inside of your other assemblies, and now it's completely customizable. So really strong feature there that we added with Creo 9. You can go back here into our model and add him in, make sure that he's going to fit correctly. We just go right up to the mannequin tab, insert it into the design. Specifically, let's go ahead and grab that custom mannequin that we worked on. We're going to place him on the bike in a seated position. A few different references that will lay out to do that. Just where we want to place him, what direction he's going to be facing. It's just essentially a datum plane or a surface on the bottom side. And the direction for him looks pretty good there. Right, and again, I mentioned one of the biggest new things was the interface that we work within. You see over on the left, we have our mannequin tree that we can manage the different pieces and the different snapshots and times. And how snapshots work is we can put the mannequin in these different postures, hands in the right positions, and take snapshots of all that if we'd like to. We can also here make sure that this person's reach is going to work, make sure that our user can reach whatever they need to. And again, another new feature that we have there is if the mannequin was unable to reach, it would put the arm out as far as possible so you could see exactly how close that you were, show you what that distance is. In my case, the work is working pretty well. We can go ahead and keep moving on from there. We can go ahead and do this on the left-hand side here. We can use the dragger functionality if we wanted to here too. Makes it very easy to adjust the user. You can see here, once you set that, you can set the rotation. Make sure that his hand is actually in the right position there. And maybe we want to do the same thing over on the other side. Maybe we'll do a similar thing down on the feet. And the way that it works is we're aligning these different points in the model with the different points in the mannequin. It's pretty much fundamentally how that reach feature works. I'll do the same thing over here on the right-hand side. And just making sure that these motions can be physically done. At the same time, you're really making sure that you're not going to have problems, right? Is the leg interfering with the muffler? Are your toes bumping into something? It's much better to figure that out right here within Mannequin or Human Factors before having to go out and build out a full prototype. And maybe here we notice in the model, he looks a little bit uncomfortable. You can go through and make some changes if need be. Use that from the mannequin tree off on the left, use the dragger on him to move him into the right positions. Just trying to make this writing experience as comfortable as possible. And now again, with Creo 9, those type of motions are done much, much easier. All right, and our person's looking good to ride, look good to get on the road. Again, at any point, if you like the current position that he's in, you can take a snapshot of that, always come back to it, send out to others. Last thing that I do want to show here is these new abilities to set up the view fields. In this case here, we'll do it from the eyes of the mannequin, and we can have it set up to look through particular components. And what this really allows us to do is see if there's anything that's obstructing that view, see what objects really are in the way, and have a clear understanding of what that view cone is. So very useful and something that will update as the model updates. If you have changes to any particular features, that's going to all update what that mannequin is able to see. All right, definitely a lot of great enhancements there, a lot of different things that are really going to be useful for anyone that's working on these type of designs. Moving on into improvements in model-based definition and detailing. We already mentioned the idea of that divide surface that kind of falls into this. It's definitely a good way for this type of product information to be added in. We also have improvements in surface finish, similar to what we've done in previous releases of Creo with all the other annotations, notes, dimensions, and so forth. Now it's surface finish that's got a rewrite. It's easier to work with, easier to edit. We have a new gallery of surface finish symbols. A lot of nice improvements if you have to work with that and add that into your manufacturing information. We added the ability to do parameters with symbols. So these can be predefined. You can use them as you place particular symbols, and then your downstream consumers will be able to see those parameters and be able to act on them from there. So our weld symbol parameters, this is all something that got enhanced. These are now exposed in Windchill's NPM link. You could use those for manufacturing, process planning, and also we added in default parameters for the out-of-the-box weld surface finish symbols. This is something that is automatically out of the box, right? You can work with some of those. You can also add your own in, so you do have a little bit of manual control over that as well. GD&T Advisor got some improvements, better support for detailing standards with the new details tab. On creation of missing dimensions, you no longer have to stop. You don't have to get out of GD&T Advisor to go create dimensions and then come back into it. It's just something you can do right on the fly. Very easy there. Also cross-highlighting of annotations between the graphics area and the GD&T Advisor tree. That's very easy. Just click on one of the features of the tree, see it highlighted up in the graphics area. Very easy to track them down and work with them, especially as your models may be getting a little bit more complex. And finally, here's some nice improvements in hatching for making drawings. Really cleaned up the workflow for creating and editing hatch patterns. That's much easier to do now. It's easier to access your favorite hatch patterns as well. You can really customize that to your heart's content and very quickly and very easily have access to those. So definitely some nice improvements there and just really helping out with the general usability in that sense. Okay, moving into the next area, we have several new improvements in generative design and the simulation areas. I'll start here with Creo Simulation Live. This is a tool that we built out through our partnership with ANSYS to do some real-time simulation in the context of really any of your designs. And one of the big things that got added here is support for multi-physics. This means that you can now have both thermal and stress loads all within one study. It's very important for a lot of people and definitely something that we have available now. We also have support for formula or gyroid-based lattices within our simulation studies here in Creo Simulation Live. Those can all be included. So say you put a gyroid-based lattice here inside of your part if you're doing a 3D print, well, that can now be studied and now be simulated in Simulation Live. A lot of work with Creo ANSYS simulation. We can now create things like mid-surface geometry, support for bearing loads, inertia relief. Also things like copy and pasting loads. This got added in. You don't have to reproduce them by typing them in every single time. Just do a copy paste, move them over to another study. So definitely some nice improvements within Creo ANSYS simulation. Creo Flow Analysis got a number of different improvements. This has definitely been a pretty active area. You can now store multiple CFD projects within one model. You don't have to store them out separately. You can look at various ones, hop from one to the other if you'd like to. Definitely a good enhancement there. We worked on meshing with some different tessellation improvements, control over that. Support for lattice geometry, the idea of using lattices for things like heat exchangers and so forth. That can now be studied and used in Creo flow analysis. A big one was the integration of behavior modeling into your flow analysis studies. This is a Creo parametric modeling tool that we've had for a while, and it's something that we use for setting up different goals and being able to let the system automatically solve for different parameters based on that goal. And this is something that now works very well in flow analysis. For example, if you wanted to solve for a certain exit velocity based on 3 or 4 parameters that you can change, we just let the system know what that is. It runs and goes and finds the optimal values. It sees what the effects of that are and sees if we can do an optimization for that given goal. And that's all something that can be done within flow analysis now. So some definite enhancements in that sense. Generative design got some improvements. We now have the concept of a safety factor to minimize mass at specific safety factors. Another thing we can do is modal analysis here as well. It means maximizing a fundamental frequency for a mass volume target, minimizing mass for some frequency floor. So those are definitely some welcome improvements. We added in support for ball joint constraints. And one other nice to have here is the ability to run a single initial simulation before you start into a generative optimization. It essentially acts like a sanity check for you. Make sure that your loads and constraints all look right, and then you can do your generative run. So just avoid spending time or spending effort on the wrong things. Just let you know something is good to go before you spend any more time on it. All right, with that, we'll go into a demonstration here. I'm going to be looking at the flow analysis tool that I mentioned and a little bit of that integration here with our behavior modeling studies. Go ahead and jump right into that. All right, here we go. We'll go ahead and open up our study here. And you can see here, looking at our design, we have a windscreen, we have a dash, I got the beak down at the bottom, and this is what we're going to use for our study. And I have that base study set up with a few different initial conditions. If you haven't seen this tool before, we're essentially able to do these sort of flow studies from right within Creo to look at many different types of fluid simulations. In this case, we're going to be looking at an external flow. You can see it's very easy to work with, very easy to see and visualize the results from the study. You can very easily change these around. You can see our pop-up toolbars here, get everything that you need right in front of you without having to track down various menus. And you see the front of the flow is entering at 60 miles per hour. That might be a minimum. Maybe you want to improve upon that, whatever it might be. It could be some good results, but we want to say, okay, what can we do to be able to handle a higher velocity, maybe in this case? And what we'll do is go ahead and dive into a behavior modeling study to do that. Now we can lay out certain things as variables like pressure in the X, some of those velocities, and helps us to answer whatever questions that we want to answer. What speed will we be seeing if we raise up the pressures, or what happens is if we change a certain pressure? And this is really what behavior modeling is all about, is to improve the design to really get to that optimal design faster. First thing we're doing here is a sensitivity study. It says if I vary a certain parameter or value, what type of results are we going to get? In this case, for pressure values. And this is a lot faster than us having to manually do this, iterate through to see what type of values we get. We just let the system go ahead, compute what the results are going to be. And we can see that all plotted out there, whatever variables or values that we need to be working around. Even better now, we can do an optimization. This is another study type within behavior modeling that we can use to get to that most optimized model. Again, this is a standard type of Creo functionality that we've had, and we can now make direct use out of that here in our flow studies. In this case, we'll set the pressure on the part to certain values. That's going to be my design constraints. And now we say what we're able to vary. Go ahead and let that velocity change. And what's great about this is that we could run multiple different parameters, constraints. We could have 4 different variables, and we just let the system run. And if the constraints that we're looking to get to are impossible, or our goals are impossible, the system would let us know. And that's way better than us fumbling around for a day trying to figure that out. We can save all that time and just let the system run that through. And then we'll see what that value converges to based on however many iterations that we give the system to run through. Once the system then converges, we're able to see what that value is, something that can be automatically applied back to the study. And with that change, we can go back through here and see the new results that we got. And we have ultimately a more optimized model. We're able to handle a higher input velocity there and really doing this sort of refinement work throughout the flow analysis studies. So that means not getting just to a design and a study that simply just works, but actually getting to a much more refined and much more efficient model at the end of the day. Looks really good. And again, very visual, very easy to interact with, and we can always check back onto those studies, even as we go through and change our models. All right. And with that, we can go ahead and move into our last section here, that meaning our additive and subtractive manufacturing world. So we'll start off with additive. One thing that we added in is support for open quilts on stochastic lattices. You can make some very interesting geometry with those, make things like skin lattices. Automatic redirect of fluid flows is another thing that got added into and worked within the additive world. Getting back more into using, say, flow analysis on lattices for heat exchangers, things like that. You can do variable wall offsets for your formula-based lattices. You're now able to mix user-defined and materialized style supports for a given model. That's all based off of our metal-based printing processes. They all use that materialized support structure, so now you can mix those with your own user-defined. Very welcome improvement in that sense. Several different improvements in high-speed machining. That means better surface finish and flexibility with a new geodesic 5-axis finishing tool path. It helps in a lot of different areas, helps to improve tool life, avoid chatter, faster overall machining, and at the end of the day, faster overall NC programming time as well. So that's a big improvement that we have there, be able to do those faster and still end up with a better tool path. We also have fully associative in-process stock models in the model tree now. You can turn those off or on. They're fully associative at any time you want, can be easily updated. So definitely some nice improvements there for working with stock models in the sense of your high-speed machining. And also just your improvements in machining enhancements. A lot of small things, flexibility with particular NC tool paths, getting rid of the limitation of only using predefined CL commands. You can now define your own and define many different CL commands as you want, and then add them into your tool path. So whatever your post-processor needs might be. Also around that, we added in cutter compensation support. This is within profile passes and high-speed milling roughing. There's actually a customer request to get that cutter compensation added in there. So definitely something that's going to be a welcome enhancement. And what we'll do is go ahead into our last demonstration here to show what some of those different manufacturing improvements look like. And we'll open up our last data set here. We're going to be working with our Tiger Bike data set. More specifically, let's go ahead and get one of the parts out of here. We'll go ahead and grab the rear hub. You can see this is where all of the spokes are connected into. We might want to be making a forging for this. In general, we just want to get this into production. So what we'll do is go ahead and open up our machining assembly. And here we're going to go through and check out a few of our tool paths. In this case, let's go ahead and pull up a multi-axis roughing tool path. And this is really what you want on a part like this. You don't want to spend a ton of time treating this like a 3-axis mill, which could take hours to set up and try to do that. Just say, hey, I want to machine all of this. And since it's a multi-axis tool path, it'll rotate the tool for you automatically, gives you a very efficient tool path. And that was actually something that was introduced in Creo 8, but with Creo 9, we have a new one. Somewhat related, but this is now the geodesic option. So a similar sort of concept, but now what we're going to do is pick the tool of the appropriate size. We'll pick the outside surfaces that we want to machine, certain parameters like step over, stock allowance, really a lot of different options that we can detail there, detail how they connect, how they link together, the tool motions. And what you end up with is a very efficient path here for your finishing process where it does the same sort of thing, but in this case, we're treating it like a revolving surface. So you can really see exactly how efficient that tool path is. You could look at it and see what that tool path looks like right on the model. You could also switch over here to a solid model visualization. In this case, let's grab the stock model and bring that in. All right, and here you can see that part roughed out, and now we can check out what the finished path looks like on top of that. It's going to provide us here with a very clean finish, good surface finish, but above all, let the system do that axis control for you. If it needs to move to clear a fixture, let it do that. If it has undercuts, let the system figure that out for you. So really automating that process, letting the system determine those different factors for you so you don't have to manually go through and figure that out yourself. All right, that looks pretty good here for my geodesic finish path. First new capability that I want to show off there. Next thing that I want to show off is working with in-process models. So that's capability here to put stock models right into the tree on the left, basically related to whatever toolpath that you want. You can go ahead and turn off the workpiece so you can see this. And here, this is a stock model that we get from our high-speed multi-axis roughing toolpath. It can be any toolpath that you want. You can get the stock model for it, take the previous one, use that to build out your next one. And those are just always available to you. They don't take up different calculations, just available to you. If you need to select on them, you can show them, hide them, work with them, use them to do your rest finishing, rest roughing. That's now an option to use in those. And they can be updated with just a click of a button. Makes your life easier throughout that entire process. And those are two of the new features that we have, the in-process stock models and the geodesic finishing option. And we can look at one more here. Go ahead and check back out our model here. And this is our seat design. It's a big plastic piece. It's something that's going to be injection molded. And what I've done here is create a mold assembly in order to do that. This is from our tool design option for building out the cores and cavities. You can go ahead and see those here. And these are different things that we want to mill out using Creo NC. Go ahead and pull these up now. And we'll check out our high-speed roughing sequences that we set up initially to go through and rough this thing out. And go ahead and pull that up. And really, like most sequences in the past, one of the things that you have here is a feed rate step. This is something that we have available in our parameters. It's normally something that's constant and stays the same throughout the process, but depending on the complexity of your part and the different options that you've chosen, that could potentially be a problem. So this was something that was pretty highly requested, something that we've added in now, the ability to do adaptive feed rate control. You can see here within your parameters, all it is an option that you'll first and foremost change here, and then go through and set the different values for your feed rate. You can take it and slow it down to as much as 10%, for example, but then otherwise run at the full rate. And now with those two settings altered, the system will go through, recalculate with our new adaptive feed rate. And what you'll see is different feed rates depending on how much of the tool is being engaged. So we want that feed rate to be changing along with that. And while we want the main feed rate to stay the same and stay as fast as possible, we do want it to slow down as it goes in. So that's a welcome improvement. And the third major improvement that we had here with manufacturing, that's for 3 and 5 axis high-speed roughing and rest roughing. All right, so definitely covered a lot there, a lot of different areas from everywhere from simulation to manufacturing to even just base design that we're still working on, still making lots of changes. PTC has a huge investment in Creo, as we could see, so definitely happy to see a lot of those. And that's all I have to go through today. I can take a moment here to pass it over to you, Barbara.
Thank you, Paul. If there's anyone that has some questions, this is the time to speak. I will show my screen so you can take a look at noveg.com product page where you can find Creo in its all variation. Paul, you're absolutely the Creo rock star. Thank you so much for today's awesome presentation. We love the improvement. I do not see questions, but I also want to remind you that Noveg is changing the way designers purchase it through the software. We have all the choices and the freedom to pick and choose, and also you can talk to us over the phone and ask us anything, and don't hesitate. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is it for Creo 9, and never again without Creo. Thanks again, Paul. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Barbara. Have a good one.
Bye.